Have you ever felt that the more you learn, the less you truly understand? In a monastery nestled between ancient pines, a young monk's voice echoes through the dawn, reciting verses, memorizing words, filling his mind like a jar overflowing with water. He believes wisdom lies in knowing everything, yet every dawn he feels emptier than before. His master sits nearby, silent as the mountain, watching him chase knowledge like chasing wind. The bell tolls, and the echo lingers longer than his understanding. The student bows, frustrated. Why does silence feel heavier than his words? The world seems full of answers, yet none reach his heart. The master finally speaks softly. When the mind is full, wisdom cannot enter. But the young monk, proud and eager, cannot yet see it. The day brightens, and so begins his first lesson. That intelligence grows not by collecting more, but by releasing what binds it. Night falls, and the young monk continues to study by lamplight, tracing words with unwavering focus. Yet the more he reads, the more the silence between the verses begins to haunt. He wonders why the master never praises his efforts, why the stillness feels louder than the sutras. He studies not out of devotion, but out of fear. Fear of ignorance, of being unworthy. The flame trembles, mirroring the flicker in his heart. Knowledge fills the room, but emptiness fills his chest. As he closes another scroll, he feels a strange heaviness, the weight of understanding without wisdom. Outside, the moon watches quietly, as if waiting for him to hear what cannot be written. At dawn, the young monk finds the master sweeping leaves in the courtyard, a task so simple it feels beneath wisdom. "Why waste time with this?" he asks. The old man looks up and says nothing, only continues sweeping. Each stroke of the broom creates a rhythm softer than thought, calmer than speech. The boy grows impatient. "You know the truth. Why not teach it?" The master pauses, gazes at the falling leaves, and whispers, "If you cannot hear the silence in the broom's song, how will you hear it in words?" The young monk feels heat in his chest, anger, confusion, pride. He storms away, but the sound of sweeping follows him like a bell that will not stop ringing. Days pass in silence. The young monk begins to notice the world around him. Droplets of rain sliding from roof tiles, wind tracing invisible patterns through trees. Yet his mind races still, seeking meaning in every sound. He wonders if the master hides some secret scripture, some formula for enlightenment. One evening he sees Ryokan watching the rain without a word, his expression both joyful and empty. Suddenly, the monk realizes, the master is not teaching silence, he is silence. The realization stirs something deep inside, like the first ripple on still water. That night, sleep eludes him. His mind turns over the master's words. When the mind is full, wisdom cannot enter. He finally understands. His pursuit was not for wisdom, but validation. As dawn approaches, he steps outside into the cool air. Mist clings to his robes. The bell rings softly in the distance. He closes his eyes and lets the sound move through him instead of grasping at it. For the first time, he feels the space between thoughts, the gentle silence that intelligence cannot measure. Something shifts. He bows to the morning sun, not as a scholar seeking answers, but as a student ready to be empty. Morning mist drifts low over the monastery as the young monk approaches his master, a question burning within him. "Teach me wisdom," he says. The old man nods silently and leads him to a small wooden table. He sets down 2 teacups and begins to pour. The golden liquid rises, swirling gracefully, and keeps rising, spilling over the rim. Startled, the monk reaches out. It's overflowing. The master continues to pour, eyes calm as still water. The tea runs across the table and drips onto the floor, steaming in the cool air. At last, the master stops. "Like this cup," he says softly, "your mind is too full. How can I teach you unless you first empty it?" The words land heavy, echoing in the monk's heart. He realizes knowledge has become his burden. The silence that follows is louder than any lesson. The young monk spends the day in turmoil. Every teaching he once clung to now feels hollow, as if each word had lost its meaning. He recalls the master's calm gaze as the tea spilled endlessly, and something inside him trembles. That night, as the lantern burns low, he opens his scrolls one last time. The verses he once recited with pride now blur together. Beautiful, but empty. For the first time, he stops reading. He listens instead to the rustle of wind, to the gentle pulse of his own breath, to the sound of his thoughts falling silent. And in that silence, a strange peace stirs. The first drop of true intelligence. At sunrise, he returns to the master, bowing deeply. "How do I empty the mind?" he asks. The old man gestures toward the mountains. "Walk," he replies. The monk climbs the stone path that winds through pines, each step crunching over frost. At first, his thoughts cling, recitations, philosophies, lessons, until they scatter like leaves in the wind. He begins to feel lighter, clearer. The cold air sharpens his senses. Even the sound of his footsteps becomes music. As he reaches a ridge, the world opens wide before him. Rivers glimmering like silver veins, clouds rolling like oceans. The vastness humbles him. For the first time, he feels small, and in that smallness, infinite. By evening, the monk returns exhausted but changed. He finds the master sweeping the same courtyard again, just as before. The broom whispers across the stone, tracing invisible patterns. The young monk bows no longer with pride, but with humility. "I understand now," he says quietly. The master looks at him with gentle amusement. "No," he replies. "You have begun to forget." The monk smiles faintly, realizing the meaning. True learning begins where knowing ends. They stand together as the last light fades. The days end, washing the sky in gold and ash. The silence between them is no longer empty. It is full of understanding. Rain falls during the night, soft and steady, cleansing the monastery roofs. The young monk wakes to its rhythm, opening the window to watch droplets glide down bamboo leaves. The world seems reborn, simple, alive, wordless. He realizes intelligence is not about holding truths, but allowing truth to flow through you. Every drop of rain becomes a teacher. Every silence, a verse. He sits in stillness. No scrolls, no recitations, only breath and awareness. Outside, the world reflects his mind, clear, washed, and open. The overflowing cup has been emptied. Now, and only now, it can be filled again. One morning, a traveler arrives at the monastery, her footsteps soft yet certain. She carries no offerings, no scrolls, only a quiet gaze that seems to see through everything. The young monk greets her, eager to share his newfound wisdom. She listens, smiling gently, and asks, "If all is illusion, who then is speaking?" The question strikes him silent. He searches his mind for the right sutra, the right answer, but finds none. The silence between them grows thick, almost sacred. The traveler bows and says, "Sometimes not knowing is closer to truth than knowing." Her words echo long after she departs, leaving him standing beneath the ancient gate, feeling both empty and strangely awake. For the first time, he tastes the humility of not knowing, and it is sweeter than pride. The question lingers in his thoughts for days. The more he tries to answer it, the more it unravels everything he once believed. He realizes how much of his learning was an armor, a defense against the simple truth of uncertainty. Sitting by the river, he watches his reflection ripple and fade. Knowledge, he thinks, is like water, The more you clutch it, the less you can hold. He begins to laugh softly, not out of mockery, but from release. Perhaps ignorance, too, has its own wisdom, a space where new light can enter. The current moves on, carrying fallen leaves away, and he feels himself flow with it, not knowing, yet at peace. The master finds him there by the river, and sits beside him without a word. After a while, he says softly, "When the mind admits it does not know, it becomes like an open sky." The monk nods slowly, understanding that the space of unknowing is not emptiness, but potential, the ground from which true clarity grows. They sit together, watching the clouds move freely, never clinging to form. The master begins to laugh, a deep, joyful sound that startles the birds. The monk laughs too, without knowing why. In their shared laughter, the boundary between teacher and student dissolves. What remains is the sound of the river, the sky, and two hearts learning to be simple again. Days later, the traveler returns to the monastery. The young monk greets her differently this time, not as a teacher to impress, but as a mirror to learn from. She asks again, "Who are you?" And he smiles. "I don't know," he says, and perhaps that is enough. She laughs softly, her eyes bright with approval. In that brief moment, there is no student or traveler, no question or answer, only awareness itself, shimmering like moonlight over water. The master watches from afar, and a faint smile crosses his face. The boy is beginning to see, not with the mind, but with the heart. That night, the monk sits alone before the altar. He thinks of the traveler's question, not as a riddle to solve, but as a doorway. He bows deeply, whispering into the silence, "I do not know." The words feel lighter than any chant, freer than any verse. In that unknowing, a deeper intelligence awakens, one that listens instead of concludes, observes instead of controls. The candle burns low, its flame steady and unwavering. Outside, the rain begins again, and he understands that wisdom was never hidden, only buried beneath the noise of certainty. The sound of the rain feels like applause from the universe itself. The next morning, the master gives the young monk an unusual task. For 30 days, he must speak no words and study no texts. Listen, the master says, not to others, but to life itself. At first, silence feels like imprisonment. Every thought in his head grows louder, demanding to be heard. He longs for the comfort of chants and verses, but none come. Days pass. The rhythm of bells, footsteps, wind through bamboo. These become his only language. Slowly, he begins to notice what words had hidden. The breath between sounds, the spaces between moments. He watches sunlight shift on stone, rain dance across rooftops, shadows stretch and dissolve. The world speaks in silence, and for the first time he listens. Days of silence pass like ripples on water. The monk begins to see the world anew. Without words, everything feels alive. The whisper of wind becomes a teaching. The flicker of candlelight, a scripture. His thoughts, once wild and relentless, now move like slow clouds across a calm sky. Yet at times, old restlessness returns. He catches himself yearning to explain, to name, to define. And then he smiles, remembering the master's lesson. To empty the cup, one must stop pouring. The silence no longer feels empty. It breathes. He walks by the river at dusk and senses the rhythm of the earth moving through him. In stillness, he realizes, wisdom was never outside. It waited within, beneath the noise. On the 7th day, rain begins to fall endlessly. The monastery roofs glisten, and the earth smells of life reborn. The monk sits beneath the eaves, watching the world dissolve into silver threads. Each droplet lands without hesitation, complete, perfect. He realizes how his own thoughts used to rush, trying to be something more than what they were. The rain teaches differently. To fall, to be, to vanish. He feels a deep peace spreading through him, a quiet joy that has no reason. The rain stops, but its echo remains, not as sound, but as awareness. He bows to the empty courtyard and whispers inwardly, "The world has always been speaking. I just never stopped talking long enough to hear it." When the rain clears, the master leads him to a small bridge over a rushing stream. "What do you hear?" he asks. The monk closes his eyes. At first, he hears the roar of water, then the murmur beneath it, then the silence behind all sound. He realizes each noise exists only because of silence, and without silence, nothing can be heard. The master smiles. Nothing can be heard. The mind's like this river. It speaks until you stop listening to the noise and begin hearing the flow. The monk opens his eyes, watching the current glide by, each ripple fleeting yet eternal. He bows deeply, saying nothing. No words could hold the depth of what he now understands. The 30th day arrives. Dawn spills softly across the mountains, touching the monastery roofs with pale fire. The monk sits in meditation, utterly still. Thoughts come and go like birds passing through open sky, but he no longer chases them. He understands now. Silence was never absence, but presence in its purest form. As the sun climbs higher, he opens his eyes and sees the world as if for the first time. Simple, radiant, whole. The bell rings, and for once, it doesn't call him to prayer. It simply rings, existing perfectly in this moment. He smiles, knowing that true intelligence is not in mastering knowledge, but in mastering the quiet heart. After 30 days of silence, the young monk bows before his master. The old man says softly, "Now that your mind is clear, let your hands learn what your tongue could not." From that day forward, the monk stops meditating alone and begins serving others. Sweeping courtyards, repairing roofs, sharing food with travelers. Each act becomes a silent sutra. Each moment, a lesson. He realizes wisdom is not hidden in scriptures, but in the warmth of a shared bowl of rice, the smile of a stranger, the humility of work done with love. The monastery hums with life, and within that rhythm he feels something deeper than knowledge. A gentle intelligence born not of thought, but of compassion. One afternoon, a weary traveler arrives seeking food and shelter. Without hesitation, the monk welcomes her, offering warm tea and a place to rest. As she eats, she tells of her hardships, lost family, endless wandering. He listens without interruption, his silence speaking louder than sympathy. For the first time, he feels the truth of wisdom not as knowledge, but as presence, the ability to fully hear another soul. When she leaves, she bows with tears in her eyes. The monk feels none of the pride he once sought, only quiet gratitude. Service, he realizes, is not giving. It is returning what was never separate. Days melt into weeks. The monk tends the temple garden, planting seeds, watering sprouts, and watching grow under the sun's patient care. He begins to see his own journey mirrored in the soil, from chaos to calm, from striving to surrender. Each plant rises not by effort, but by allowing itself to be guided by rain and light. As he wipes sweat from his brow, he whispers inwardly, "The mind grows like the earth, only when softened." The fragrance of blossoms fills the air. For the first time, he feels true joy. Not the sharp joy of achievement, but the round, full joy of belonging. One evening, the master joins him by the garden wall. Neither speaks for a long time. The sky burns with sunset, gold fading into crimson, crimson into dusk. Finally, the master says, "You have learned to listen to silence. Now learn to speak without sound, through your being." The monk bows, tears gathering in his eyes. He feels no separation between teacher and student, between heart and world. The master smiles, placing a hand on his shoulder. Wisdom begins when compassion breathes. They stand there as the first stars appear, teacher and student, yet both reflections of the same still sky. Late that night, the monk sits before the temple altar once more. The candle burns low, casting trembling halos across the floor. He bows deeply, not in prayer, but in gratitude. Every act of service, every moment of silence, every breath of humility has shown him that intelligence is not a mountain to climb, but a field to nurture. He no longer seeks to be wise, he simply lives wisely. The wind moves through the open door, carrying the scent of the garden. Somewhere, a bell rings softly, and he smiles. The noise of knowledge has become the music of understanding. His heart is finally awake. The master calls the monk to the courtyard at dawn. "Explain enlightenment without words," he says. The young monk freezes, heart racing. How can one show what cannot be spoken? He looks at the world around him. The stone path, the rising sun, the mist curling through pine branches. Slowly, he realizes the answer has been with him all along. Enlightenment is not a concept to recite. It is a presence to embody. He bows to the master and gestures to a simple bowl of water, its surface reflecting sky and mountain. The gesture is quiet, humble, complete. The master nods, eyes glimmering. The student feels a lightness he has never known. The bridge between knowing and being has finally been crossed. For days, the monk practices showing understanding without words. He greets travelers with gestures, shares tea with smiles, and teaches through presence rather than instruction. Each motion is deliberate yet effortless, full of quiet awareness. He feels the weight of language lift from his shoulders. The world becomes a living mirror. Each glance, each breath, each ripple of the pond speaks the truths he once sought in books. He begins to see that knowledge and being are not separate. The heart knows what the mind cannot name. One evening, the monk stands by the river, watching the water flow endlessly. He recalls the traveler's question from long ago. "Who are you?" Now, he knows. He is neither the question nor the answer. He is the current itself, moving through life with presence and care. No longer chasing, no longer clinging, he flows with awareness. The mountains echo the river's song, and he realizes enlightenment is not a destination, but a rhythm, a harmony of mind, heart, and world. He bows to the water and smiles. This is the bridge, the place where knowing dissolves into being, and being becomes the clearest form of intelligence. The master leads the monk to the temple roof at twilight. From there, the valley stretches wide below, rivers like silver threads, forests dark and soft. "What do you see?" the master asks. The monk breathes deeply. He sees everything and nothing at once, the impermanence of all things, the beauty in their fleeting nature, the space between each moment. He understands that the mind can only point. The heart must walk. No words can carry this truth. The master places a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Now you are ready," he says. The monk feels gratitude ripple through him, for silence, for service, for every moment that has taught him to be fully alive. That night, the monk sits beneath the stars, the cool air carrying scents of pine and earth. The bell rings softly in the distance. He reflects on the journey, from a mind filled with words to a heart open to light. Intelligence is no longer measured by memorized verses or clever insight, but by presence, empathy, and the ability to flow with the world. He closes his eyes, letting the rhythm of night and wind and river wash through him. The master's words echo one last time. The bridge is crossed when knowing becomes being. A deep smile rises, not from pride, but from the pure unspoken understanding that everything and nothing, silence and speech, knowledge and wisdom are one. Years have passed. The young monk has grown into a teacher, yet his lessons are no longer bound to words or scrolls. Students arrive, carrying questions and restless minds. He greets them with calm presence, observing without expectation. In the silence of the courtyard, he demonstrates wisdom through simple gestures: a bow, the pouring of tea, a smile that reaches the heart. Those who come seeking knowledge find themselves reflected in his stillness. The bell tolls softly, echoing across stone and moss. In every sound and pause, every motion and breath, the essence of understanding flows free. Here, intelligence is measured not by answers given, but by hearts awakened. A young student approaches him, voice quivering with curiosity and doubt. "Master, how do I learn wisdom?" The teacher does not answer immediately. Instead, he leads the student to the river, guiding their gaze to the flowing water, the reflection of clouds, the patterns of leaves drifting downstream. He waits in silence, allowing the student's mind to open like petals under the sun. Finally, he simply bows. The student bows in return, understanding without a single word. True learning, he realizes, is not in grasping concepts but in the quiet perception of life's rhythm, the bridge between heart and world. As the seasons change, the monastery becomes alive with silent wisdom. Students practice not to memorize, but to observe, to feel, to awaken. The teacher walks among them, adjusting posture, guiding gestures, offering gentle correction with a nod or a smile. Each movement, each breath, becomes a living lesson. Outside the gates, the world rushes with noise and confusion, but inside, every step is deliberate, every action deliberate and mindful. The still mind shines like sunlight filtered through bamboo, illuminating without imposing, guiding without controlling. One evening, a traveler arrives, older now, her eyes reflecting the wisdom of journeys past. She bows to the teacher and says, "I see now that words are only pointers." He bows in return, smiling softly. The lesson is complete, yet endless. The cycle of learning and living continues. In that simple exchange, the teacher and student recognize the impermanence of all forms, the continuity of understanding beyond time and age. Intelligence has become not something to acquire, but something to radiate quietly through presence, attention, and care. The monastery glows with the gentle light of realization, unspoken yet unmistakable. Years later, the teacher walks alone at dawn, the monastery silent around him. The wind moves through the trees, the bell echoes in the distance, and the mountains glow with first light. He pauses, breathing deeply, feeling the rhythm of the world within himself. He realizes that the journey is never truly complete. Wisdom is not a summit to reach, but a river to flow with. In the quiet reflection of morning, the still mind shines brighter than ever, illuminating the path for all who follow. And in that luminous presence, every heart finds the teacher, and every soul its own awakening.